Good evening, everybody. We're going to get going. And as we begin this meeting, I will ask that all present please silence their cell phones and other electronic devices and remind council that our procedure bylaw prescribes the use of technology during council meetings. It is 6:30 p.m. I'll call this meeting to order. I'll note that all members of council are present in the chambers with the exception of Councillor Wielden, who's joining us by Zoom. And I'm sure that those of you who tune in regularly have noticed that Councillor Fredis has been unusually absent from our meetings the last few weeks. Council and staff are aware, and I have been asked to advise the public that Councillor Fredis was diagnosed with terminal cancer about 2 weeks ago. He's in the care of his medical team, and he and Elaine have asked for privacy at this time. Elaine and Byron have also asked that we please keep them in our thoughts and our prayers. Brighton Council's work takes place on the traditional Indigenous territory of the Mississauga Anishinaabe, now of Alderville. And we are thankful to be able to work and live on these lands. We offer a land acknowledgement as a way to recognize, respect, and honor this territory, the treaties, the original occupants, their ancestors, and the historic connection they still have with these lands and waters. We are grateful for the opportunity that these lands and waters present to the people of Brighton and grateful to work in partnership with the Indigenous community on their stewardship and sustainability. I have a motion moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that Council approve the November 18th, 2024 Council agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion is carried. Members of Council, have you any declarations of pecuniary interest? And if so, please state the general nature thereof. There are none noted. Are there any announcements this evening? Councillor Rowley?
Thank you. Earlier I passed around some smile cookies, and the fact that we have a full house tonight, hopefully many people will take the time this week to stop at Tim's and pick up a smile cookie in support of community care here in Brighton this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others? About a week ago, we didn't celebrate. We commemorated Remembrance Day, and of course, on the Sunday before, we have had the Veterans Lunch and the Candlelight Vigil. I just want to reach out and thank the Legion and the cadets for their work and their participation in those events. It was another meaningful Remembrance Day weekend, and my thanks to the Legion. So those of you affiliated, please take that message back for me. And for those of you who were around on Friday night, we had an incredibly successful Santa Claus parade. It was the chair of the events committee suggested to me in Sobeys the next day, it might have been the largest one we've ever had with 64. I think he said 64 floats. It was long. It was long. So as anyone out there would know, it was long. It was a nice night. It was nice crowds, and the weather certainly held out for us. So we're grateful for that. Anyone else? Moving to the adoption of the minutes, I have a motion moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that Council adopt the November 4th, 2024 Council meeting minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. And a motion moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that Council adopt the November 12th, 2024 Council planning meeting minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion is carried. We have no statutory public meeting this evening, which brings us to delegations and presentations. At the clerk's discretion and in accordance with our procedure bylaw, Council will hear 5 presentations this evening. Presenters have 15 minutes, but you're not required to take the full 15 minutes. Presenters have 15 minutes to provide Council with their information. It is noted that language, content, and conduct must always remain respectful. Council will be provided with an opportunity to ask questions of clarification from the presentation representatives based on the information that they have presented. Council is reminded that this is not an opportunity to engage in debate with the presenters nor advance a public policy position. Presenters are reminded that Council does not make decisions during the presentation portion of this evening's meeting. Our first presentation comes from Hannah Dean of Nature Canada.
That one?
There you go.
Fabulous. Is this the clicker for the slides on the side? I have to tell you. Okay. Thank you so much. Good evening. Hello, Mayor Ostrander, councillors, guests, of which there are a few this evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this evening about an important conservation initiative that Nature Canada has been working on in Lake Ontario. My name is Hannah Dean, and I'm the organizing director at Nature Canada. And I'm here tonight with Julia LaForge, who is our policy and campaigns manager in protected areas. The purpose of this presentation tonight is to provide you with a high-level overview of what a national marine conservation area is and why Nature Canada is advocating for the establishment of one in Eastern Lake Ontario, including in the waters surrounding Brighton. And we're also hopefully going to be gathering your endorsement of the initiative, although not right now, I know. Next slide, please. So who is Nature Canada? Who are we? Nature Canada is a national conservation charity. We're actually celebrating our 85th year this year, so we have been around for a very long time. We have about 250,000 supporters across the country, and we work with over 1,000 local nature groups on different initiatives. We have been working in partnership with some groups in this region, including the South Shore Joint Initiatives, SSJI, local land trusts, and the field naturalist groups to support conservation in this region for decades. We were active in supporting the provincial government's commitments for protecting nature in the region, and we're pleased to see the establishment of 2 new conservation reserves along the South Shore of Prince Edward County in 2023. And we're excited to speak with you now about the opportunity to safeguard the waters of Lake Ontario adjacent to Brighton through a national marine conservation area. I'll pass it to Julia.
Yeah. Do you have a different version of the presentation? We sent another version.
We had done an edit and sent a
Yeah.
second version. But it's
If not, I can just continue from here. Okay, so the Great Lakes are a vital economic, natural, and cultural resource that supply habitat and fresh water to thousands of species and millions of people. In fact, the majority of Ontarians live in the catch basin of Lake Ontario. The Great Lakes are also the traditional home of various First Nations, who are the original guardians of the land. Canada, the United States, as well as the provinces and states surrounding the lakes, have been working for over 50 years to improve the lake's health and build on centuries of Indigenous stewardship. We've made really good progress, but the lakes themselves are still underprotected and they need our support. I think if you go ahead 2 slides, there'll be one with a bird, a rare lake.
I think she's found this. I think she's found it. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I'll pause.
Thanks, Jessica. Doesn't have our time, does it?
It's the same one.
It's the same one.
It's okay. Okay. If you go one more, is there? Yeah, no, one more. Okay.
Yep.
You're gonna have to jump around a little bit. We just changed the order, so that's okay. An NMCA would be great for the protection of rare bird species like the piping plover, who are threatened by habitat loss. Lake Ontario is also an important stopover point for many migratory bird species. By protecting the rich diversity of birds and other species in Brighton and surrounding areas, this will allow everyone to enjoy local nature. And now go back to the last slide. There are several threats to Lake Ontario, including the increase in toxic algae blooms from pollution and from invasive species. An NMCA would be one tool in the toolbox that would help address this problem. This would also address harms that are caused to local fish ecology, the fact that this is also bad for tourism and recreation, and that it can be even deadly to dogs and other animals. Okay, now you're going to go back.
There you go.
Keep going to the next one. There we go. Perfect. Okay, now we're on track. Okay, so an NMCA is actually a Parks Canada designation through the federal government to protect marine and freshwater ecosystems. Each of the Great Lakes is a separate marine ecoregion, and so they're seeking designation for a national marine conservation area in each of the lakes. There are currently 2 that have been designated, one in Georgian Bay, the Fathom 5 Marine Park, and the other is the Lake Superior NMCA, which was established back in 2015. Marine parks they're like national parks for the water. And so this results in federal investment to ensure that the freshwater ecosystems can be protected and restored. Next slide, please. Well, the specific details of governance and management plans are established based on each NMCA. There are certain things that are prohibited. So this includes things like oil and gas extraction, mining, bottom trawling, dumping of pollution. And then there are a number of things that are allowed, including recreational fisheries, small-scale sustainable commercial fisheries, as well as recreational use and Indigenous access. Yeah, sorry, next slide. The NMCA would bring along many benefits to the region. This would build on the progress, as I mentioned, of the 50 years of work on Great Lakes Recovery Plan. And NMCA would ensure that nature is conserved for the long term and that future generations would not only benefit from the progress made to date, but that they could be able to see continued improvement in the water quality itself. As I mentioned, there are many critical species that would also be protected. This would result in no further species being lost and also support the restoration of habitat in the area. There's also a long-term investment for stewardship of Lake Ontario. As I mentioned, the federal government through Parks Canada would invest in the site. As an example, the Lake Ontario NMCA recently received $37 million from the federal government to build a visitor center in that region, which is obviously a huge boost to tourism. In addition, there's also a priority placed on protecting the cultural heritage of the region, which in this case would include things like the Presqu'île Lighthouse and the many local shipwrecks. And NMCA would ensure that these wrecks and lighthouses could be preserved and protected for the long term.
Okay, skip ahead and ahead till we get to a nice map. Beautiful. Okay, so what areas could or should be protected under an NMCA in Lake Ontario? It's actually too early to define those boundaries. But to give you a sense of what we are advocating for at Nature Canada, you can see on the map where there's sort of green gradient lining across the water, what we're asking for in terms of protection and what nature really needs in order to thrive. So it would kind of tip down all the way here towards Presqu'île Provincial Park, and it covers 6 important bird areas and then spans up to the western part of the Thousand Islands Park region as well, and covers Wolfe Island. So the NMCA in Lake Ontario could protect up to 5,000 square kilometers of water and shoreline and habitat. On the US side of things, they've already gone ahead and have established a marine sanctuary and formal protections on their water side. So it's up to Canada now to match that investment in protection. Next slide. We also have reports here that I'll distribute afterwards, but what I wanted to show you with this slide is sort of where we're at in the designation process and how it formally moves forward. So we're in that site identification side of things. We're not formal in any kind of actual process underway. There has been no formal initiation of the project by any level of government, though we know that there is a high level of interest in pursuing it. So Nature Canada is currently advocating that the provincial and federal government work together to begin the feasibility assessment phase. This phase would take about a year to a year and a half and would include detailed consultations with councils like yourself and communities, as well as First Nations and other stakeholder groups. If the consultation in the feasibility assessment revealed scope, then there would be a negotiated agreement to establish the site, and then finally the area would be protected with legislation. This can take quite a long time. Next slide, please. Part of our work as a national charity is to support community engagement to raise the profile of this project. So as part of that campaign, we've been conducting outreach with several local community groups, diverse stakeholders, as well as First Nations in the region and government officials at all levels. The reception thus far has been really positive. We actually haven't had much resistance at all. Some skepticism up front around like what's allowed, what's not allowed. But as soon as we clarify that, people seem very keen on the idea and keen to protect the lake that they all love. Our stakeholder outreach from this region include historians, scuba divers, surfer groups, community groups like Lions clubs, and we've gathered over 64 organizational sign-ons from the region in a joint letter that was sent to the province urging them to signal their openness to work with Ottawa on the initiative. Individual citizens have also weighed in through a letter writing campaign that has had over 20,000 individuals send letters to the federal and provincial ministers supporting the project. Next slide, please. And then government outreach. You might know that guy. He's not the Minister of Environment anymore, but Minister Pecuniary is very keen on the idea and was positive and supportive of us continuing our work. We're currently trying to establish relationships with Minister McCarthy as he steps in to assume the role of Minister Kanjan, who's now, as you know, out on maternity leave. And we've been in communication with local ministry staff and also on the federal side, working closely with Parks Canada to keep this thing moving. And we're also engaging councils like yours. We're hoping that at municipal levels, we can get endorsements to demonstrate to the provincial government that protecting Lake Ontario would support your local community, local biodiversity, support your economy, grow tourism, and protect your cultural heritage. So understanding that there's a lot of information around the NMCA and we're brief on time, we're here to answer any questions that you might have on the project, but really we just wanted to say thank you for letting us come and speak to you today.
Thank you both very much, and I will open the floor to members of council for questions of clarification. Councillor Wheeldon.
Thank you, Mayor. Not a question of clarification so much as just want to report that we did circulate documents from this group to the Environmental Sustainability Committee. And I know some of our members reached out and interacted with them directly, which is fantastic. Certainly no complaints from us, and glad to see there's so much support.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you. So mine might be a procedural question. Obviously, you don't have correspondence in front of us tonight, so we won't be endorsing or anything this evening. What's the plan for that? Would that be at a later date after you conduct some sort of socialize this more? Is that the intent?
That's the intent.
Okay.
Just wanted to get you on side.
We also had, the library was very generous and allowed us to put up a display downstairs, and on the poster, there's a QR code that will take individuals if they would like to sign on to a letter asking the provincial government to take action on this. So if individuals are interested, they can act now, but for the council, that would be up for discussion.
But wait, there's more. That's what I'm being told, right? Yeah. Anything else from members of council? Well, thank you both very much.
Thank you so much. We have reports. Can you circulate these for after? Just for people for takeaways. It's just a report that we made on the project, so you have it for reference in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have a motion moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Councillor Rowley, that council receive the presentation from Nature Canada regarding a National Marine Conservation Area designation. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. The next presentation comes from the Brighton Tennis Club, and it's Carl Dyer and Anu Greenwood. Welcome.
Hi, good evening, Mayor Ostrander and councillors and guests. My name is Anu Greenwood. I'm a member of the Brighton Tennis Club. And this is Carl Dyer, the president of the tennis club. And we're just here to present our argument against the proposal for user fees that we heard would be implemented by Parks and Recreation for next year. So next slide, thank you. Just a short history about the tennis club. We've been established for a long time, since 1970, not that long. And we've been serving the tennis club for decades. We've got a long relationship with OTA and Tennis Canada. In fact, we have some of our membership fees go towards OTA. We also serve over 100 active players, ranging from 6 to 90. So we've got a wide range of players. And we really promote a strong, healthy tennis community by building cooperative partnerships with local organizations. Our mission statement is to provide and promote tennis play for everyone, regardless of age, skill, level, gender, or social status, and to be part of the community. What do we do other than play tennis, of course? Well, we're run by dedicated volunteers. We promote tennis across the community to everybody, as I mentioned already. We have always worked with the community to help pay for things like maintenance costs and upkeep, to make sure the courts are safe and optimum tennis conditions for everybody. We also, as a club, we offer subsidized tennis lessons for children between 6 and 17. We do provide free equipment, rackets and balls for anybody who wants to play. We also collaborate closely with local community organizations like Sunny Days, Applefest. We've worked closely with the high school and community service and other things like that. As far as what we have contributed financially, over the years, we have contributed over $20,000 towards court upgrades and maintenance, including a $5,000 donation. And we've also invested over $1,000 in buying new nets and posts. Should that say posts or poles? Anyway, to replace the aging community nets, which we had to replace because they needed to be repaired. We've also worked with donations from Home Hardware to replace the practice board at the back of the court, which cost another $800. And as far as volunteer hours go, the club has contributed, we estimate, over 50 hours of volunteer labor every year towards setting up the court, maintaining the court, taking down all the equipment and any vandalism, repair, etc. So our argument against user fees is basically this. Currently, we reserve 32 hours of scheduled play during the week for the club members. And there is an extra 48 hours over the season for things like tournaments and lessons. So at the rate of $15 an hour, which is what we've heard is going to be proposed, we calculated that this would cost over $13,000 for the year. Which basically would lead to a huge increase in adult membership, which is not something that we could sustain. And we feel that the club would basically be dissolved due to decline in membership. The impact of that, we feel, for the tennis members would be jeopardizing the sense of community, the social aspect, because we're a very social club. And we feel, given the demographics of Brighton, obviously we have a lot of seniors here who definitely come and play for the social aspect as well as the health aspect. The maintenance and the upkeep of the courts and equipment wouldn't continue based on support from the tennis club, because we've always contributed to grants and costs to improve the courts over the years. And we feel that if we had to increase the fees, then the community partnerships would also no longer be sustainable. Perhaps low-income families and seniors and juniors would be disadvantaged because we'd have to charge really high membership fees. Overall, ironically, we feel if we didn't have a tennis club, then the town wouldn't really be able to get any income generated as a result. So it kind of doesn't make sense in that respect, we feel. And the town wouldn't be able to receive thousands in capital donations that we've consistently provided over the years as well. Just a quick comparison of other tennis courts in the area, which are similar sizes. None of these have user fees. And you can see up there a list of the courts in the local areas around here. And finally, we are happy to look at solutions and work together with the municipality. We will gladly contribute to capital costs and provide volunteers to cover any of the operation of the courts. We'd be happy to set up the courts and do anything that's required for the benefit of the entire tennis playing public. And ideally, that would save the municipality significant costs for paid staff. So, you know, it's a win-win for everybody, we feel. We also will continue to be ambassadors for anyone who wishes to play tennis in Brighton, regardless of whether they are members or not. And we are extremely open to come to an amicable agreement by discussing various options, and we're welcome to open communication to promote tennis for everybody. Thank you for listening. Any questions?
Thank you both. I will open the floor to questions of clarification from members of council. Councillor Butwell.
Thank you very much. And through you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for the presentation. I wrote down a few notes. I'd read your presentation before, but hearing it helps to let it sink in a bit. So, so you have roughly 100 users, you said? Is that within the club? Members,
Mhm.
okay. And what is the current membership fee?
The current membership fee is $80 for adults
Okay,
and 50 for children. But keep in mind that out of the 80, 10 goes to the OTA right away. So it's really 70 for children, 47.
okay, thanks. And is there a current agreement with the municipality? Or what is the current agreement with the municipality? For those
we've
who are
always had
watching from home.
an informal agreement with the municipality that's lasted for 55 years. It's always worked. It's zero cost to the municipality except for capital cost. So even during capital cost, we donate thousands of dollars on any resurfacing project. Other than that, there's been zero cost to the town.
May I continue? Because I realized I had asked one already. Does the club itself, as a membership under OTA, does the club itself apply for grants themselves that can be applied to this location?
In the past, in terms of applying for grants, we've done it in conjunction with the town and province. It's sort of the way that grants have been in the past anyway, where you have to have a community group, the town, the province. And that's why that's why we've always been willing to pull our fair share.
Okay, so let's go. So you indicate that you have roughly 32 hours per week. Generally, when are those hours?
The schedule is published on our website and on the town's website, but
Okay.
generally it's first three. Oh, this is a long detail here, but first 3 hours of the morning, say 9 to 12, weekdays except for Thursday, and evenings because we have to accommodate our worker members between 7 and
9.
7 and 9, 7 and 10, depending on how long people want to stay. For the juniors, there's a period of time in the spring up to July 1st when they have lessons, but they also have time reserved for them on Friday nights for them to have their own specific time. So there's, it's very chunky.
Okay.
In terms of public open time, there's a huge amount of public open time. We're talking all day. And we're talking weekends, most weekends, except for the odd tournament we have. We have 2 weekend tournaments a year.
So your club times are generally during the week, except for the tournaments that.
Yeah, there's a
happen.
little Sunday morning time as well.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'm just trying to get an idea of public versus
Yeah,
club
trying
access.
to get that, but we've always tried to make that balance where we make it clear that there's a huge public part and some club time. I'd like to add that no public member has ever refused a chance to play with us, even during our time. They can show up at the gate and say, "Oh, I'd like to play," or "I'm thinking about trying to play." No problem. They're included. And should they and there's no real charge to that or anything. It's just the way we promote tennis.
Hoping that they'll enjoy it and come on board and enhance the membership.
Absolutely.
And are there hours that you don't use that you generally have blocked off that the club doesn't use itself?
What would you like to know?
Just if you've blocked the time off, but you don't have people sign up for those times.
Oh,
Do
we
they
don't have
get
a sign-up
released?
system.
Okay,
It's always people come. Those are the times people come, but there's not a sign-up system for those times. It's
Okay.
not like a traditional, there's a match between these two people. We have a rotation system. It maximizes use of the courts. There's never single or very, very rarely a singles game that goes on because again, we need to maximize the time that we have and get as much use out of the court as we can.
It's very social.
Yeah, and the
that's
social
the
aspect.
aspect. So it's not as if you're reserving blocks of time that are not being used by your club members?
No.
Okay.
However, again, if there are occasionally times, and it could be weather, it could be just the odd times, there's a extra court free.
Okay.
And so if that court's free, it's free. It's free for anybody who wants to come and play then. And that's the way it is.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Any other questions from members of council? Councillor Rowley.
Thank you. So reading through your report again, so membership is your only source of revenue. What about the tournaments? It says that you host some tournaments through the
Free.
year. Do you make, they're all free?
And most prizes are donated by club members.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you both. Councillor Wheeldon.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I really appreciate the tone of this presentation. You came here looking to work together, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Anyone else from council? Councillor Wright.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, do you have any idea what you would anticipate the membership fees to go to should the town implement the fees?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Do you know what you're anticipating the membership fees to move to? Like, how much would they increase by?
Yes. If they instituted $15 an hour, the membership fees would go over $200
Okay.
easily. And that's not sustainable. We have a private club in Trenton that charges less than that. If it was any amount less than that, there still would be large increases in membership fees to cover that, or cutbacks in club time. We could, look at that as a economic statement here.
Right.
So if we cut back, this one of my thinking is that if we cut back on times, I'm really worried that the most vulnerable people will be the ones cut. Our junior program costs us money to run. So if you're charging us to use the court, and we double charge because we run a junior program at a loss, obviously that's a spot we'd have to cut. Women, we have a women's night on Tuesday night. It's not as attended as, say, the men's night. So do you make the tough decision and cut women's night? I don't know,
No.
but I agree.
Like your
I totally agree.
We'll let the tennis club fight that one out on their own. How's
I
that sound?
totally agree, but these are tough decisions that would have to be made if fees were levied on us. And at this point, we've already said that we are no cost to the town. No more cost than a sidewalk or a road or the splash park, the skateboard park.
Thank you.
Everything else is done by us.
Councillor Botwell.
Thank you again, and through you. You mentioned that you contributed to capital assets or ongoing maintenance and repair. Just as an example, the net that was replaced, what would the cost of one of those be?
The
So
net
that was in the presentation.
Yeah.
Sorry, it cost $1,200 for the new net and the posts, which we actually own as a club. And that's what we've been using on the courts.
Okay,
Mhm.
so the ones that were there previously, were they the municipalities then?
They were, and we found they were, sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
They weren't of the same quality, and so they kept breaking, and we had to keep paying for repairs for them. So then we decided to buy our own as a higher quality, and then they lasted a lot longer. So it's kind of makes more sense.
And those are left on for the rest of the public to use?
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Everything we do is available for the public. I'm going to say a caveat now, and that is the lighting system, which is a bit difficult. We have a lighting system on the court that's co-owned between us and the town. We pay the electrical bill. We pay all the repairs on the lighting. But the town owns the poles and they own half of the lights. There was a reason for this. It just is,
Could you enlighten me?
yes, I can. Let's go back to Hurricane Sandy, 2012. The poles blew down. There was an insurance claim by the town for the poles and lights. They got a contractor, or we got a contractor, who rebuilt it with insufficient lighting, and the lights weren't high enough. we paid the extra to have extensions. If you go by the lights, you'll see that there are long metal extensions. Putting the lights at a high enough level that we're able to play. Prior to that, you couldn't. You were blinded by the lights that were already there. Secondly, the let me think where I was going with that. Yes, the intensity of the lights was way too dim. So we added LED lighting, 4 LED lightings, or I believe 4, to increase the amount of lighting lumens on the court so that it was playable. And third, we've just replaced recently the timer on it, which is faulty. So there's kind of a co-ownership, but we do pay all the costs.
So the timer detects when the lights are needed, or it's all manually set?
It's all manually set, and there's a reason for that, is kind of vandalism reason.
Okay.
So we have to have control of that just to prevent
So you like the lights being on so that people can see if there's somebody there vandalizing stuff?
No. The lighting system has a timer so that they'll go off immediately at 11 if someone forgets to turn them off. But
Okay.
really, we have an on-off system, lockbox, and it's only used between those 3 hours at night that we have
Okay.
to control costs, which are, hovering towards $1,000 a year, and vandalism. Yeah,
So
that's it.
from till 11, so what's that, 9? No, 8 p.m. till 11? The lights are on then through the summer?
Depends on when it gets dark, right?
Okay.
As the season progresses, the lights come on earlier.
So if you're done with your time, the lights are still on, someone can
We
come
turn
and.
them off.
We turn them off when
So-
we're done.
So if somebody was to, when you're done, what, it was 7 till 9, you said?
7 till
10 or 11,
People are
whenever.
done.
Yeah.
Okay. So the weekday court time, you said in the evenings you had a time block of 7 till, I thought it was 7 till 9 p.m.
7 till 11.
Till
Let's say
11?
7 to 11,
Okay,
potentially.
okay. Okay, so if you're done earlier, the lights get turned off, so the
Yes.
public can't go in and rely on it being light till a certain point in time?
Right.
Okay,
That being said, if there was a spare court, someone could play it.
okay. Would there be any objection if they were just left on till a certain time of night?
Yes,
Okay,
we pay the bills.
okay,
Okay. And we repair the lights. We replace the bulbs.
Mhm.
So that's going to put a huge cost on us.
okay, so I'm getting the sense this might be where the crux of things is then, or some of it. Because you answered.
This
very
is,
really-
this
yeah.
is what's always worked.
Okay,
It's-
I
yeah.
have not known, because I don't
I'm
see,
not trying
I
to,
don't see a copy of anything in front of me that says this is the current agreement, and I'm fleshing it out. I'd like to
Mhm.
make sure that people who
Mhm.
are watching at home understand
Mhm.
why that's important and the relevant
Yeah.
information. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you all. Anyone else from council? CEO, I assume we'll get a fulsome report at budget about why staff is recommending we go down this road, and we can have a conversation then during deliberations.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, we have had some initial conversations as well, and we will bring something back to council.
Appreciate that. So I trust that the tennis club will be paying attention during budget as well.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
time.
Yep.
Thank you.
Motion's moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that council receive presentation from a new Greenwood and Carl Dyer Tennis Club regarding user fees for tennis court use. Is there any discussion? Councillor Butwell?
So as the mover of the motion, so just to make sure that this is going to be going back to staff to have a conversation, and that there'll be some more information for us come budget time.
We can
I don't want to receive it and shelf it.
we can receive it and refer to budget.
Like, yeah, thank you.
CIO?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, you can receive it in direct staff. Essentially, this is going to come in the user fees. So while we're going to deal with the tennis club, and I have had an initial meeting to talk about how it might be structured better, we will come back as staff with a recommendation specifically for the tennis club, but the user fees will come to council separate from budget. So just so you're aware, the user fees could still be approved if that's what council wishes to do. We will make sure we come come back with something specifically with regard to tennis and likely pickleball so that council can make that decision. Where the agreement might be established between those clubs, you can still have those user fees in place as well. So we'll get something back to you before the user fee is expected to be approved so that council has all the information.
Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the CAO. So just wanting to make sure that in essentially moving this fees report forward, we are not removing council from making a final decision on whatever that is.
I'll answer for her. No. The presentation with regard to fees and charges will come to council for our decision.
Thank you.
Do you still want to refer this to budget? Do you want to refer it to staff? It sounds like we're already in the works anyway.
It sounds like for at least a couple of the presentations and their representatives tonight that this one is the first presentation, but it sounds like the municipality benefits from an outside group supplying services, much like the YMCA does. And perhaps we might want to have a look at that type of memorandum of understanding or user agreement with these clubs as well. That would be interesting for me to hear. So perhaps for staff. Doesn't prohibit us from discussing it at budget time.
So you are the mover of the motion, but may I suggest that we refer it to staff rather than to budget? That way it can come back to us through other forms other than just budget deliberations. It could come through budget, but it could come another way as well.
Or it could come through both.
Correct.
Let's do both.
Motion reads that council receive and refer the presentation to staff and budget from Anu Greenwood and Carl Dyer Tennis Club regarding user fees for tennis court use. Yes? Deputy Mayor, you're okay with that? Any further discussion from members of council? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion is carried. Do we have the pickleball people in the room? Very well. So our next presentation is from Audrey Prenzel, President, Pickleball Club. Audrey?
Your Worship, Council, thank you for allowing us to be here. I'm Audrey Prenzel, and I am the president of the Brighton Pickleball Club. With me, I have Bree Radford. She is our treasurer. She thought she'd like to tag along tonight. We're a 135-member not-for-profit club that loves to play North America's fastest-growing sport. Unlike our tennis friends, we are just in our second full year of playing at King Edward Park. We started in late August in 2022 when the courts opened at the end of that summer. We have 7 members on our volunteer board of directors, and we're a completely new board with a young club. Our board's only about 6 weeks old. We were all voted in October 1st of this year. So when we assumed the new positions of our responsibilities, I asked for a meeting with Vicky Hallam just to put a name to the face, and we did meet up on October 30th. Another club director was there with me, and we were happy to share that the 2 key factors that we felt was this new executive really wanted to bring forward was to grow the club and engage more with the community. The growth of a club is measured by providing high-end competitive play and developing novice players. To engage with the community necessitates us having time, court accesses, resources, and to offer special events that promote pickleball. So it was at this meeting that we learned about the town's plans for the proposed $10 an hour fee, which we understood was for the reserved block of 4 courts, as well as a stipulation that a minimum of 70% of our members be Brighton residents. So as a result of this new information, our board, obviously, we met to discuss how to move forward. And I will say that we have no objection to the principle of user fees. I get it. Nobody gets a free ride. To that end, not unlike our tennis friends, you know, we do contribute resources, and these resources and our time are for everyone's safety and usage. So we will continue doing everything that we have been doing to date. So from our first meeting, though, we took stock of 3 items that we felt, these are kind of our sticking points, and we're going to have to, you know, figure out how to navigate these. So the first uncertainty was basically looking at membership dues. We looked at them against our expenses, and we were concerned with the timeline of $10 an hour starting in the 2025 season. So that would take our group from $0 this year to $8,750 for 2025. And when I say expenses as a frame of reference, this translates for us into all of our own operational costs, our insurance, some capital expenses, and unfortunately, the cost of any vandalism. And we're 2 for 2 for each season. So that sort of, it just sort of happens. The second factor that we thought, oh, geez, this could be a little tenuous, is we won't know the number of people who are going to be joining in 2025 who actually are Brighton residents, and we have to meet that minimum 70% threshold. That didn't exist before. So that was number 2 for something that's a little bit of a challenge for us. And the third challenge would be the merit and cost of us joining organizations referred to as Pickleball Canada and Pickleball Ontario. And those are the national and provincial pickleball associations there. We haven't joined yet. We're too young. We are not there yet. So now that may be in limbo because it was our intention to join these associations, and you have to join both of them. You have to join your provincial one and the national one. That's just how it rolls with pickleball. We wanted to join to elevate our professionalism, and specifically what that means is allowing our members to earn certifications such as becoming a referee or a coach, remain up to date on game rules and regulations, connect with other clubs for events, and it also paves the way for our members to compete at sanctioned tournaments. We have some really, really strong, great players. And our longer range goal would be to host our own pickleball tournaments. So if it is the intention of council to introduce a user fee for the 2025 season, on behalf of the Brighton Pickleball Club and our executive, our membership, I would ask that we somehow work out either a flat fee or cut that down to $5 and or cut hours, whatever it's going to take. This will help us elevate our goals to increase the caliber of everything that our club offers. This also gives us time to scale up to get the right number of people from the right community, adjust our membership pricing accordingly, and factor in further cost of joining Brighton or Pickleball Canada and Pickleball Ontario. So that's it. I am appreciative of your time.
And we're appreciative of yours.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Questions or comments from members of council? Councillor Wright.
Same question that I gave the tennis people through you, Mr. Mayor. What are your current membership fees, and what do you anticipate they would go to?
So we charge $70 this year, and we don't know because we weren't sure of the actual cost and if it was per court or if it's for all 4 courts, and if there was the availability of having a flat fee. So I'm up here saying what I'd like to say, but I don't have specifics.
Okay.
Anyone else on council? Councillor Wheeldon?
Thank you. Again, just wanted to say, really appreciate the tone you're bringing tonight. Happy to work with people who are happy to work with us.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Anyone else? Councillor O'Reilly?
Thank you. This might be a question for the CEO. I'm assuming, just as with the tennis club, there's been talks with the pickleball group as well as to how to maneuver through this.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have not had direct conversation with the Pickleball Club as of yet. We're still working through some of the provisions with the tennis club, but the intent is to take a look at both clubs and come up with a similar agreement between each of the clubs and the municipality.
Thank you both. Anyone else? Councillor Butwell, as the mover of this motion, I'm assuming, but you can correct me, I'm assuming that you'll want it to mirror similarly to the last one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You assumed correctly.
That happens sometimes, not often. The motion is moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, and I'll let me know if it's the wording you'd like to hear. That council receive and refer to staff and budget the presentation from Audrey Prenzel, President Pickleball Club, regarding user fees for pickleball court use. Does that work for you? Go ahead.
Yeah, just to clarify, so staff will work on this, bring it back to us, and then we will, depending on what we're thinking, that will affect the budget, clearly.
CAO.
So again, just to go through the user fees, the user fees will come forward to council for review. There will then be a public meeting and then it will come back for approval. So essentially the user fee is in place to reserve courts specifically. So although, they're open at any time, if you want specific time, that's what the user fee intent was. So after having a conversation with the tennis club and trying to get an understanding of what had happened historically and how we come up with some kind of an agreement, the intent is staff will bring something back to council to identify those groups and how we can work with them to put something in place that's reasonable, that, does the things that I feel the municipality needs to address and still supports the tennis club. And we'll do that so that council has an opportunity to make a decision on that with the costs associated. And then the user fees can then be a different discussion once we address the tennis club and the pickleball club. Council can decide on whether or not they want to move forward with those fees specifically. But once we have that agreement, those would be for others that would come in and want to reserve the court specifically.
Okay, thank you.
So the wording's okay then of the motion?
Provided that the intent is understood to be reflective of what the CAO just said, yes. I'm triple checking myself.
I just think by referring it to staff and budget, we capture everything that we're going to see come before
Yes,
us.
thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, you're okay with that wording? Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. So we need to bring some people in, and if people want to leave, you're certainly welcome to do so. We don't expect you to stick around for the meeting. We're happy to have you, of course, but we will reconvene this. I'll take a recess. We'll reconvene at 7:25. That's a 3-minute recess. You and my wife. It's 7:25. I'll call this meeting back to order. And as the presenters for this weren't in the room when I read the presentation information, it's just a reminder that presenters have 15 minutes to provide council with the information. As you likely are aware, council doesn't make decisions with regard to your presentation. Of course, you have to be kind. We'll be kind, you be kind, you know, all that good stuff. And we won't engage in a debate with you as long as you promise not to engage in a debate with us. In fact, we won't engage with a debate with you, even if you do engage with a debate with us. So how's that sound?
We're not here to debate.
I know that, but others might be, we never know, right? So this presentation comes from the Brighton Dragon Boat Club, and it is Sheryl Loucks. Sheryl, please.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for having us tonight. We're the Brighton Dragon Boat Club. My name is Sheryl Loucks, and I'm a director on our board of directors. So the image you have up on your screen is our current dock in Gosport at the Harborview Marina. You'll see sort of on the left, tucked under the tree, that's our current shed for all of our gear. This is the dock we're using. Can I have next slide? So a little bit of history. Well, that's a little bit too far. Can I go back one? She's a fast gun over there. So our mission is to improve and support our members' physical fitness, to enhance community connections and nurture their love of nature through our dragon boating, which is designed for all skill levels. So we have been around since 2007. We've served approximately 2,000 members over the last 17 years, and our membership has been growing very rapidly, just like the township has. So prior to COVID, membership was averaging about 100 members a season, and we are now up to 154. Next slide. So our competitive program doubled this year in 2024, which was very exciting. Traditionally, the club is a very strong competitive program. We have sent 15 members that have qualified to represent Canada at the national and the world's level, and they have come back with medals, including this year. We had a member in Italy. If you look at our local festivals we've attended, at all 3 festivals, our teams had the best times overall all day. That's extremely impressive when you look at Peterborough. That's against 69 teams. So they are well trained. They're a mean stroking machine. Next slide. So we have a very huge recreational program. So we go out every day of the week. We keep our costs down at less than $1.25 a day. In fact, we have 3 evening sessions. So some days we even have members going out twice in a day. That's more paddling sessions than any other club between Kingston and Pickering by far. Most clubs only go out about twice a week. Our members range in age from 13 to 84 years old. We have had a youth team in the past. We're currently in the process of rebuilding a youth program. We provide all the equipment people need. So this is a no-cost sport to participate in. It's accessible to everyone. Our members are extremely diverse. They come from every walk of life. They come with all different skills and fitness levels. And we also offer a ton of socializing opportunities on and off the water, which is extremely good for mental health, between getting that nature bath out in nature and creating those social connections, which people deeply crave after COVID. Next slide. So we are a volunteer-driven, volunteer-run. We have a volunteer board. All of our activities, we have special programming all season long, like a history tour, a nature tour. And those activities are all made possible by volunteers who put up their hands throughout the club. We have 24 trained coaches and steers. This is extraordinary in Southern Ontario, have to tell you. We put a huge amount of effort in recruiting, training, and fostering our coaches and steers. Next slide. So that amount of success that I've been talking about was recognized this year by an Ontario Trillium Foundation grant. It's a 2-year grant. They've assisted us with the purchase of 2 new boats. That's what you're seeing pictured here. They're helping us pay for professional coach and steer training and more equipment. It's also allowing us to incentivize our new members to stay committed to the club. It's helping us recruit new coaches and steers, and it's helping us grow and maintain our programs. It also allows us to support and promote the Trenton Dragon Boat Festival. They exclusively use our boats. So that festival only happens happens because of our boats. They don't have racing boats of their own. And we are here tonight because we're asking Brighton to help us protect this investment. So next slide. So what are we asking you for? This is, take a look at that slide. You can see the marina. Your 3 docks are over on the right. Well, my right, looking at it this way. And so what we're asking for is a long-term concession for the usage of both sides of what you call dock 1. So that is the dock that is closest to the shore. We'd like to relocate our shed to the property near the dock. We'd possibly add safety grab bars to the dock. That would be at our expense as we have on our existing dock. We just like to let you know that our members have never parked in the marina or township parking lots. We are only asking for the same amount of allocated parking that you would already allocate to Dock 1 users. One of the huge advantages of your dock is it's a floating dock. And as anyone who knows who's been on the bay's water levels are just wildly fluctuating. So the closer that dock is down to the seat level of the boat, the safer it is for people to get on and off. So that enables us to continue offering paddling opportunities, that exercise and that recreation and that socialization for those who are frail, who have injuries, or who have balance issues. And your dock, as you can also see in that image, is protected by a break wall. This is also huge because the wind conditions have gotten a lot stronger on the bay. So what's happening if you look back at our dock is the wind and the waves are coming in and they're smashing our boats against the dock. So we have been having expensive damage to our boats on that exposed dock. If we move over on the other side, it would protect the boats a lot better. And without having those huge gusts of wind roll across the water and smack into us, when you're trying to maneuver a 42-foot boat, they don't turn on a pinwheel or a dime, right? So for our steers to come in safely, it hugely increases our safety to be able to come in on that other dock. Next slide. So she hasn't flipped it yet. So why are we asking you for help now after 17 years? Well, that is because the Harborview Marina is continuing to deteriorate. If anyone has been down there, you will have seen what we are talking about. So if you look up at the top right corner of the photograph, you'll see they've lost the fuel station. There's still wreckage you can see in the photo that's right there underneath the water. The docks have sustained considerable damage that is going unrepaired. The boat launch, which you see in the bottom left of the picture, has been unusable to us for this entire year because there's a dock sitting and resting on it. So that's no good anymore. We also have noticed that it's kind of hard to see in this image, but you can kind of see up by the shore, the dock is quite higher than down at the other end, that ramp that goes down to the main part of the dock. That's just getting steeper and steeper, which creates another safety hazard. We have added adjustable steps at our cost to this dock. They're not easy to adjust. And even then, sometimes the water levels over there are so low, it's still difficult for people, some of our older folks and others with injuries, to get in and out of the boats. We can go to the next slide. So this is our dock. This is a current image of the dock when it came out of the water this fall. You can see that that top deck on the deck is warped. That was due to neglect by the marina by leaving it in the water over last winter. The metal frame is bent in places, and you can also see right there at the front, there's a break in that one support. There's other damage as well to the dock. We've been doing a ton of work in maintaining this dock, even though it is marina property, not our property. We've had a challenge when we couldn't use the boat launch moving over to the other one because the dock beside it was so damaged it didn't even have support pillars earlier this season. And our dock is a fixed height dock, so we have to raise and lower it ourselves due to a lack of marina cooperation lately. We don't have the proper equipment to do that, so it's a lot of manpower and work on our part. So our volunteers do a lot of maintenance to the dock and keep it running as smoothly and as safely as possible for our users, but it's become a challenge and it's become an increasing safety concern for us.
So I'm going to pause there. We'll carry on. We could do one more. The damage to our con. So we talked about this, and then, yes, I'm going to pause. I'll ask for any questions now. We have another option we can talk about, but I'll ask about this option first. If there's any questions anyone has.
We'll get you to finish the presentation, then
Sure.
we'll go into questions.
You want to go to the next slide? So why consider waiving the docking fees? We are a not-for-profit, sustainable, volunteer-operated club. Unlike a lot of the other recreational sports that we've been hearing about this evening, where the soccer fields are provided, the ball diamonds, the playing courts, the skateboard parks, we've never received any municipal support. Not only has our membership grown, but the activity level has too. The demand for the seats on our boat has increased by 40% over the last year of people wanting to go out more often. And we've successfully met that demand by growing our coach and steer team so that the boats are going out more often, or we're sending out 2 boats per session instead of 1. The club has supported in the past many calls for Brighton fundraising, including campaigns for the Brighton Rescue Boat and the Lighthouse Reconstruction Project. Your Dock 1 is not fully utilized because of the low water levels and the weeds, neither are which an issue for the dragon boats. So a dragon boat can hold 22 people, which obviously is a lot of weight, but even then it's not a problem for us. We also want to point out that our club has supported and helped develop and grow lots of other recreational programs in the township, such as those at the YMCA, the curling club. We have many members who help launch pickleball, and we have hiking and cycling groups. And we also support your local businesses with weekly breakfast and lunch groups that they go out all the time after paddling. So we support our local businesses too. So this is our alternative proposal. So we did meet with Vicki Hallam, and we talked about just this whole general idea of moving over and using Dock 1. If that isn't what you would like to consider, this is another option. We could work together to build an extension. So you've kind of got 20 feet going over, and then you have 20, 40, 50, Doug? 50 feet long. It would be about 4 feet across would be ideal for us to accommodate the boats. This would allow, if you want to move to the next slide, this would allow for that space to have, so you could still have your dockage and boats renting that south side of Dock 1, so you're not losing any of your dockage fees, but we would still have room to use both sides of that extension and fit in a dragon boat. So a dragon boat is about 3 feet 6 inches across, and the average boat on that Dock 1 would be about 7 feet across. So you'd still have a 9-foot gap, which is feasible. And on that other picture you saw, we've been pulling in and out beside a sailboat all year, so we are used to having boats beside us. It's just another option to think about. It would not require the addition of a separate entrance. We could use the existing entrance. You don't have to worry about building that. And that water is dead water. It's so shallow that a motorized boat can't use that space. But once again, it would be fine for dragon boats. So in terms of our shed, their numbers are there. It's 10 by 3 by 8 by 3. It's solid wood. It stores our paddles, our PFDs, our steering oars, and our equipment. So it's quite sound. It can be moved. And we think an ideal location would be, there's sort of a tree on the left side, down at the bottom near the cars. It would sort of tuck right there. There's other spots we could put it. It's just a suggestion. So that's our presentation.
Thank you, Sheryl.
Yeah.
Questions or comments from members of the council? Councillor Botwell.
Me again. Thank you. When you obtained those, or when you got those 2 additional boats, did you keep the original 2, or did you?
No, we sold those.
You sold those. So you don't need to accommodate 4 boats. Is that?
No, we're just accommodating 2 boats.
Is there, with the growth in the club over the last 4, almost 5 years now, are you thinking you may need additional space at some point, or would have liked to have kept the boats?
It's not so much an issue of space for additional boats. It's coaches and steers to take the boats we have out more often.
Okay. With an expanding membership, though, you might end up with an expanded group of certified people, correct?
Yes, and that's what we've been seeing all along, is as the club gets bigger, we keep recruiting more steers and coaches, right? Because they kind of get trained up with the paddlers.
you'd mentioned right off the bat, a long-term solution or a long-term agreement.
It would do no good for us to move for something for a 1-year term, right? So we would be looking for an agreement that would be optimally, say, a 10-year agreement that gets reviewed every 5 years, you know, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Because in order to be a sustainable club, we need a long-term agreement. So we couldn't be battling every year wondering, do we have a dock? Do we not have a dock, right? Obviously, the club doesn't exist without a dock.
Okay. And I was writing a note while you were talking to this point, so I completely missed the information.
That's okay.
The additional dock, the option,
Mhm.
what did I put? Dock 1A option.
Yes, you can call it that.
I figure there's an A and a B now on that, in that scenario. The cost of that dock, have you explored
Doug,
costs?
you want to talk about that?
Just, I used to run a marina, so I'm just wondering what the costs are.
Yeah.
Marina.
The Outer Harbor Marina for the
Oh,
Toronto
okay.
Port Authority.
So this is Doug Harrison. Doug's been with the club and has served in pretty much every capacity there is. And he's been investigating our dock issue.
Floating docks are of a particular nature in its usage. 4-foot dock would certainly be less money than your present 8-foot. It's be savings on that. I've done a rough look-see, and this is online, Home Depot and other suppliers. You're probably looking at $10,000 to $12,000 would be my guess. Now, that's pricing that I've found online as a town approaching us, an actual supplier directly
3 times as much.
could be a different number.
Okay, so is this something the club might be interested in building themselves? Or do you have the expertise or hiring out to build yourself?
There's a possibility. We haven't actually looked at that topic. We have a fellow that is a member, actually built docks at one point, so we might have that option. And I believe you can buy them as a kit.
Yeah.
So that is a possibility as well, but the materials it's themselves would be a large part of that.
Would your insurance be increased if they were docks that you built? They would.
Yeah, so currently for insurance, we do have insurance, and just like everyone else's, it's an inflated cost for us every year. And it did go up substantially again this year. But the marina technically has the insurance for the dock and the marina, right? We have insurance for the boat and taking our paddlers out and for transportation of the boats. So it would be a very different situation if we were going to insure like that dock spar. Because we would be claiming then ownership of the spar, right? So it would be a very big jump in insurance, probably double, I would guess.
And then you have the issue of docks in and out at the end of the season. For us to do that would just
We don't
probably
have the
be-
ability to.
So
move
floating
them in and
docks
out.
could stay in.
I'm sorry.
Floating docks could stay in.
But your existing
docks,
docks come out.
They do come
Oh,
out now.
yeah.
They do. They're presently out. The chance of freeze up in that shallower water, I guess, is there. Ice coming out from shore
Mhm.
could be an issue because you're doing the units that it floats on are plastic. Basically, so that could be an issue.
Well, there might be a way, depending on how we address this, to keep the costs down and.
I think initially the idea of the spur was as an option rather than the town losing the revenue from dock 1,
And that's where I'm coming from with this.
which is
I don't know what that
better,
would be.
but 2 boats, possibly 3 boats are on that dock through the season. I've sort of kept an eye on it through the
We've
year.
been
and
watching, but for limited times, not every day, not every week, like that dock is not used a lot.
Now, the downside is we would have to have both sides. And it would mean that with a 42-foot boat on a 60-foot dock, we would have to be the outboard end of the dock because we don't have the maneuverability to get in front of another boat. So it would pretty much eliminate that dock if we were on dock 1.
Correct.
But if the town saw that as something that they wanted to do for the community, it'd be good for us. Hence, we came up with the idea of running a spur. It's a different thought, but it totally useless for a motorboat because you wouldn't have the depth. But for us, fine.
Yeah,
It
'cause
actually would work well.
You only draw 12 inches.
About
I guess?
right.
12 inches,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, thank you.
And that's at the max at the ferry centers.
Fully loaded,
Mhm.
evenly fully loaded.
When we can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Any other questions from members of council? Councilor Rowley?
Thank you, Mayor. Do you currently pay for dock space now at the marina?
Mhm.
And would it be, I don't know the prices that we charge here for the municipality.
double.
Is it comparable?
No, you're double.
We're double.
Mhm.
Okay.
Double what we're presently paying.
What you're
Yeah.
paying now.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's $50 a linear foot is what the town charges. We'd be probably booked at the 42 feet, so we'd be $2,100 a boat times 2. And that's just a hair over what we're paying right now.
Yeah, a couple of the questions came up as far as loss of revenue and things, and I'll leave that to, maybe we can hear a report from Vicky at some point. Thank you.
Thank you all. Any other questions from members of council? Thank you very much.
We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
I have a motion moved by Councilor Rowley, seconded by Councilor Wright, that council receive and refer to staff the presentation from Sheryl Loucks, Brighton Dragon Boat Club, request to use the government dock in Gosport. I assume we want to, I shouldn't, but I assume you want to report back. Further, that staff report to council on the information presented. Good. Councilor Wright, you okay with that? Anything further from members of council? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. Want a moment? Okay, so we're going to let some people leave and some people come in. We will take a recess till 7:50. That's a 3-minute recess.
Oh, Mary says.
Okay, it's 7:51. I'll call this meeting back to order with my thanks to everybody. Our next presentation comes from Audrey Anderson Sherman, a presentation with regard to Mute Swan Management Program passed by Council. Audrey, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mayor Ostrander and Council, for the opportunity to speak to an issue that is very important to our community. I am Audrey Anderson Sherman, and I'm here on behalf of hundreds of Brighton residents who are extremely concerned about the motion Council passed on March 25th that supported Mute Swan management. Management, as you know, involves destroying the swan's eggs and or killing them. In respect of the limited space in council chambers, only a few of those residents are here today. Please stand up or raise your hands. We appreciate the mayor's clarification 2 weeks ago that no harm would come to Brighton swans. However, the motion still stands. It is clearly supportive of management and includes reference to managing mute swans in and around Presqu'île Bay. Equally troubling is that the motion calls for the swans' removal from the protection of the Federal Act, which could open them up to management anywhere in Canada, even if Brighton didn't harm them. As people became aware of this motion, dozens reached out to me, and a group of us came together to gauge community response. It has been overwhelming. I submitted a petition with our delegation request that has 647 Brighton resident signatures. 10 local Brighton businesses had the petition out for customers to sign. That is not only out of compassion, but because businesses recognize there would be an economic and tourism impact. I submitted a small sample of local hospitality marketing materials that makes that point. Businesses here know that people visit Brighton in part to enjoy the swans at our waterfront. A separate tourist and visitor petition and one on change.org was getting about 200 signatures a week, largely from our area, but also from farther afield. We have over 1,000 signatures on those petitions. So I can tell you, residents, voters, tourists, and visitors do not want this motion to stand. I'll now turn it over to Callie Duffin, who is the founder of the Mute Swan Society, to go through some facts about mute swans that should give you comfort in that supporting management is not only unpopular, but is unnecessary. Callie?
Hi, thank you, Audra, and thank you, Your Worship and councillors, for the opportunity to speak tonight. One role of the Mute Swan Society is to monitor and share research. I know Audra provided a literature review, and I invite you to read that document. I will be speaking to the presentation, which covers the highlights of that literature review and specifically addresses the concerns raised by Doug McCrae in his delegation before the March 25th motion. Before jumping in, I do want to say how much I respect Doug and how much I like him. It pains me to disagree with him, but I appear here because the Swans are not guilty as charged. So I will turn to the presentation and we'll start on the second slide. Yes, exactly. So on March 25th, Doug McCrae said that many of the bird species he grew up with have declined. And while he recognizes causes include development and intensification, he said that in his opinion, mute swans were one of the greatest threats. Wetland birds have declined because human activity has reduced the majority of wetlands in Ontario. With their traditional habitat reduced or compromised, species used to pristine environments do not do well. Conversely, mute swans do well in degraded environments. That does not mean they cause the degradation. Next slide. 3 of the species that Doug mentioned had been decreasing by the 1970s and were below their goal population by 1978. Since the first breeding pair of mute swans was recorded in Brighton in 1985, they could not have contributed to the most precipitous declines. And those declines occurred across Canada, even in areas with no mute swans. 2 other species Doug mentioned remain within goal range Canada-wide. While they may have relocated, their overall population has seen little change. Next slide. Some good news is that 4 of the 6 species Doug mentioned are showing signs of recovery in coastal wetlands, which are represented by the blue lines in these charts. Mute swans are also increasing in coastal wetlands. Despite mute swans, the water birds who share territory are recovering. Next slide. Here again, Doug acknowledged that shoreline development and intensification are factors, but said that mute swans have impacted the quality of wetlands and are a menace to the health of our environment. Again, declines in marsh bird species are primarily due to a suite of anthropogenic threats and stressors, especially in the lower Great Lakes. Another leading factor is water levels, as well as less fluctuation of water levels and less interspersion, which are described in the longer review of the literature. Water levels were lower and more stable before 2016, and that corresponded to declines in 5 of the species Doug mentioned. Water levels have been higher since 2016, and those species are increasing. Mute swans have no control of water levels. Next slide. Doug referenced other jurisdictions who have aggressively managed mute swans and pointed to Chesapeake Bay as one example. Chesapeake Bay had indeed virtually eliminated mute swans by 2013. Despite that, its water quality in the most recent report still received a D+. Next slide. Unlike Chesapeake Bay, an upcoming report shows evidence of improvement in biotic conditions for coastal wetland birds in the Great Lakes over the last 4 years. It is notable that 4 of the 6 areas in the lower Great Lakes that are good, as shown in blue, correspond to the highest concentration of mute swans. Next slide. Doug stated that mute swans are highly aggressive, chase out intruders, and have left much of our wetlands a virtual biological desert. In fact, multiple studies show that the vast majority of aggressive encounters are with other mute swans, not other water birds. Another study showed that many water birds are actually found closer to mute swans than at randomly placed control sites, suggesting there are benefits to sharing space. Next slide. Finally, Doug said that introduced species like mute swans are one of the greatest threats to the environment. It's important to remember that introduced is not synonymous with invasive. The UN platform on biodiversity and ecosystem services reports that only 10% of non-native or introduced species are harmful, meaning 90% are not. It is a native insect that is killing more trees than any other in North America, and introduced species can help ecosystems thrive. Countless ecologists and biologists have made clear that a species' origins should not be the basis for assuming they are invaders. Next slide. There's also the matter of when we choose to like or dislike introduced species, which is subjective. Cats, dogs, tulips, cherry trees and their blossoms, and the bluegrass on our lawns are all introduced species. Wheat and grapes, which are also on Brighton's coat of arms, were introduced, and the motion did not seek to remove them. Mute swans are now a naturalized species, which means they have lived in Canada for over 50 years as naturalized, but they've been here over a century and nested in Ontario for more than 18 generations. Next slide. The native versus introduced dichotomy, though, came up on March 25th relative to trumpeter swans, as it often does. As Doug said then, and as illustrated in the bird life species fact sheet here, trumpeters did exist in Ontario some time ago, but they are not a native breeding or nesting species here. Next slide. Still, they are favored and fostered. As a result, their population has grown faster and their range and distribution have expanded much more than mutes. That growth has been universally celebrated by wildlife authorities. And this is significant because mutes and trumpeters have essentially the same diets, attributes, and behaviors. But no concerns are expressed about trumpeters being a menace to the environment. This is a look at the relative numbers of Canada's 3 swans as of 2021, and as you can see, mutes are a fraction of the others. If their behaviors were truly so detrimental to our ecosystem, we should be 8 times more concerned about trumpeters because Canada-wide, they outnumber mutes 8 to 1. And to be clear, this is not a value statement or an anti-trumpeter comment. I support all swans. It is just context. I also recognize that they do not outnumber mutes in Brighton yet, but in part that's because they never did nest here. So in summary, wetland birds have declined with a decline in wetlands. Declines happened across Canada, even where there are no mute swans and before mute swans nested in Brighton. That they were introduced does not mean they are invasive. And further proof that they are benign comes from the celebrated expansion of trumpeter swans who have the same diet, behaviors, and attributes with no concerns expressed about their impacts on ecosystems. The majority of Ontario municipalities, therefore, do not manage mute swans, and for all these reasons, it would be unjustified and would be cruel. The next 4 slides are just citations which were indicated throughout the presentation with the numbers. And I will close by saying that, of course, we recognize that councils sometimes have to make unpopular decisions. And I thank you for your public service because those are hard decisions to make. But those tend to be on substantive issues. In this case, there are not many mute swans within Brighton Council's jurisdiction. As Doug said, the majority are at the Presqu'île Provincial Park and Nature Conservancy waterfronts, so this needn't be a priority for council. I thank you for your time. I welcome any questions, and I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much for your presentation, to both of you for your presentation. I'll open the floor to questions of clarification for members of council. Councillor Wheeldon.
Thank you, Mayor. Normally, when faced with a matter of expertise, I look to local relevant experts. And this only came up because one of those came to us in the first place. Now we're being presented with other information that seems to counter that and seems to be very thoroughly sourced. And so I wonder if this issue might be a good one to send to the Environmental Sustainability Committee. I know we have members on the committee who have a background that includes managing wildlife populations, and they understand the complexities of that a lot better than I certainly do. And so I would like to have some opportunity to have this information or these dueling experts parsed for us by the committee that we've put together largely for purposes like this.
Councillor Wheeldon, I'll note that there is correspondence later in the agenda at which we will be discussing whether to support or receive that correspondence, maybe that's a good time for that conversation.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other members of council with questions or clarification? Thank you both.
Thank you very much for your time.
And as I noted, there is correspondence later in the agenda where we will discuss making a decision one way or the other, receive or support. It's moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that council receive the presentation from Audra Anderson Sherman and Kelly Duffin regarding regarding opposition to the Mute Swan Management Program passed by council, motion March 25th, 2024. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Brings us to citizens' comment, and for the first time in a long time, we have some. So citizens' comment is an opportunity for members of the public to submit comments or ideas to council on matters appearing before council on tonight's agenda. A maximum of 10 minutes is set aside for citizens' comment, leaving each speaker with 2 minutes to provide council with their comments. It is noted that language, content, and conduct must remain respectful at all times. Comments will be received without comment, debate, or questions from council. The presiding officer may request clarification and/or additional information on the comments for the member of the public. So when I call you up, please approach, or if your comment has already been made by a previous commenter, I would ask that you say that it has already been made and we can move on in the agenda. So the first one comes from Susan Smith of Port Hope with regard to the notice of motion on cat concerns. Susan. It is.
Hi, Mayor, Council, and staff, appreciate it. I'm an expert at nothing, but I did have experience.
Good company then.
I had experience with cats. I was feeding 11 ferals, and somebody in the wisdom dumped 9 baby kittens off, so I've gotten right into this. Regarding the motion 11.1, I just wanted to state that for some people, they don't realize that there's a cat problem. There is. I've dug into it. There's actually cities that call it a crisis because of the number of cats. One female cat can produce over 200 kittens in a matter of 2 years. So you can see how quickly the cat population. And I realize that birds don't like cats. That's why I'm here on this. I think, you know, there's things that can happen that we can make everybody happy, correct the situation, education, I'll let someone else speak to that. Gardening, if we get the cat population under control. We have trappers that go out and they spend an enormous amount of time trapping cats, getting them fixed. Like Bob Barker said, get your cats spayed and neutered. People aren't doing that. It's a human-made problem. The cat population is way out of control. We need to fix it, and it might just satisfy both sides, cats and humans, cats and the bird watchers. Everybody likes birds too. I would like to see you listen to people on the TNR program, which is Trap, Neuter, Return.
That's about 2 minutes, Susan.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Then just before I call the next person up, this is a notice of motion, so we won't read it tonight. It will come up at the next council meeting as a motion, just for everyone's information. So the next on the same item is Martin Field of Oshawa. Martin? Well, she does that.
Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. Thank you for having me here tonight. My name is Martin Field. I am from Oshawa, 1134 Somerville Street, Oshawa. I'm here tonight to respond to item 11.1. It may be a little premature because nothing has been debated or decided upon yet, but I felt it was important to address this issue. There are a number of initiatives I can suggest. I've delegated before numerous municipalities to establish TNR programs, trap, neuter, return. In a great majority of cases, they've been an outstanding success. I have sat on the as vice chair on the Oshawa Animal Care Advisory Committee and chaired their regulatory and bylaw working group. I would recommend there be a no roaming bylaw. That would be a huge advantage to contain the incessant breeding of cats that are freely roaming. The other one is to establish a TNR program. I'd be willing to work with members of council and staff. This is a 160-page manual that I'd be glad to distribute between staff and members of council on the management of feral cats and the colonies. And also a provision, I wasn't able to access any specific bylaws, but a provision on the feeding of wildlife as it pertains to the feeding of songbirds and the spilt seed on the ground providing an attractant to wildlife, where cats may predate on birds that are on the ground, and keeping those feeding stations in a sanitary condition. So in a nutshell, that basically, those are the 3 points I want to focus on. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Martin. Appreciate your comments.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And on the same subject, a comment from, I apologize, it's MJ Kowalski. It's a G.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor and Council and guests. My name's MJ Galaski. I also am Vice Chair of the Oshawa Animal Care Advisory Committee this year, as well. I am also President of the Animal Rescue Crew nonprofit charity group, which I have just currently moved here in the last 3 years, and I've had a substantial involvement within this community. Being from Durham region and highly involved in the trap, neuter, return program, which Martin himself, myself, and a few other members fought very hard to get in the Oshawa community. The need in Durham region is huge, but since I moved here, I cannot believe the need for the control and population in a humane way by doing a trap, neuter, return program. I just finished, as of today, doing a farm community. I was attached to a trailer park, which in the summer I rescued over 30 cats and kittens and had them fixed, placed into homes and adopted out. The remainders were involved in a trap, neuter, return program and placed back into their community where they're being looked after, sheltered, and fed. The need is great. We can no longer dig our heads in the sand and say we don't have a cat problem. We do. My concern with this is what exactly is best. What is the best practice when it says what is best practices for reducing cat roaming? I do believe there should be a bylaw not to allow free roaming cats. But my concern is what is best practice? Does that mean trapping them and euthanizing them? That's not the solution. The solution is by offering the community a resource, because myself as a trapper, I spend countless hours trapping, driving the cats to Toronto because they have a phenomenal program at the Humane Society where they fix the cats, they vaccinate, they do rabies, they spay neuter, they microchip, they revolution, deworm those animals for free for colony caretakers. And that's huge. So I now am driving cats from this community on my own time to Toronto, getting the cats fixed at their expense for this community area. So our best practice, I think, in this area is to offer the community with the expertise of the people who have established these programs, who are actively involved with these programs by offering a trap, neuter, return program. And that's what's going to decrease your population of cats in this community. Thank you.
Thank you. So we only have about 5 minutes left in our citizens' comment, and we have 5 more citizens' comments. So please, if someone does say what you were going to say, let it stand. And the first is Vic Shukoff. These are all these folks are from Brighton, so I won't single out what municipality you're from.
How is everyone? I just have a short.
I'm sorry, Vic. And all of these are about swans. All the rest of the 5 are about swans. So
Yeah,
go ahead.
my cat's on a leash.
There you go.
And she was fixed. We thought it was a male, but anyways, that's when I learned what a vulva was. However, I have a short rhetorical question. If we, as a species, did not populate this neck of the woods, wouldn't the mutes dominate anyways eventually, as it's, in my mind, one of the laws of nature, what have you. So quickly, who are we to play God with nature's creatures, God's creatures? And if I caught a bit of the swan gist, which is dear to me, if anything, I think we are always the invasive species in most cases, judging by.
Ladies and gentlemen, no clapping, no booing.
Please wait for the end. Okay, that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. The next is Doug Crosby.
Good evening, Mayor, councilors. I'm just a regular guy. I just like to go out and feed the swans. I've been doing it for 6 or 7 years down at Barkhoven in the wintertime. I'm going to tell you, first of all, swans don't come there every day in the wintertime. They only come under the most extreme circumstances when there's no other water open in the area. Barkhoven is open because of the natural turbulence. So they come there, and if it's, we get above a certain number, we'll go down and feed them, like say over 20 or so. And last year, we didn't have bad weather. The water didn't freeze up everywhere, so we didn't have to feed them at all. The year before, we had a lot of cold weather, and we had to go out and feed them maybe, a month or so, maybe more. But to me, I want to talk to you about the people say they're aggressive and they're nasty. Well, I've stood next to these creatures right here. Next to that would be a trumpeter, and there would be a duck and a goose, and they were all standing there waiting to be fed, floating around, mingling among each other, and no aggression. The aggression happens when a nest is threatened. And if somebody threatened your child, you would be aggressive too. So that's just my thoughts on swans, how they're not aggressive, and how I believe they belong here. They're part of Brighton. They have been for many years. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. The next is Debbie Perry.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, guests. My name is Debbie Perry, and I'm a Brighton resident, and I'm speaking on behalf of Swan Rescue mostly. Being a member of Brighton and being on the Brighton Facebook page, every year there is a call to help swans that are injured, that are sick, that are caught in fishing lines, and I'm one of many who go out there and do the rescue. The swans that we have in Brighton are sick. We have impacted their environment so badly. Every single one that I took to Sandy Pines died. And they died from internal injuries, from a lot of it was the algae in the water. But when Brighton residents who love the swans as much as I love the swans, they see an injured or a sick bird, They want people to help them. They reach out. They're very concerned. They love their swans. I took a drive around today, and to be honest, I drove all along the lake. I drove in and around through the park. I saw 3 pairs of swans today. We are the problem, as been said tonight. There is a lot of pollution in that water from the boats. There is a lot of line dropped. There's a lot of fishing lures and people feeding the swans. It's encouraging them to come when they're throwing bread, even though there's signs there. People are not listening to that. They're not paying attention. Swans are a part of Brighton. Whether you believe that or not, people come here to see the swans. My friends from Toronto come. First thing they want to do is see the swans. We do not want to be the Brighton that is responsible for culling, destroying swans. That is not going to look good for us. Thank you.
Thank you. The next is from just members of council. We've hit our 10 minutes, but we only have 2 left. So with your permission, I'm going to carry on. Okay. And the next is from Terry Edick. Did I say your last name right, Terry? Yeah, okay. Thank you.
A lot of what I was going to say has been covered, so I won't repeat it all. But I do have to say, while I'm a resident of Brighton, I lived for many years on Consacon Lake, which is just inside the county. And the M&R did a count of the mute swans, and it was in excess of 170 swans. We were privileged enough on our waterfront to have 3 nests. I got to watch things that were just beautiful and amazing. What I also noted is, so the end of Lake Consacon, the west end, was a conservation area. So it would be part west of the trail that goes across. That used to be, yes, thank you. Sorry. And the birds down there were amazing. There were great white egrets, there were herons, there were green herons, just about every kind of duck you can imagine. And everybody coexisted. It was never an issue. The only time there might have been an issue would have been if somebody was going at their nest or chasing their babies. So again, I'm going to get back into what has already been said, but I've seen firsthand for a lot of years that these fellas do exist and they do coexist. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Deirdre Weatherall.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Deirdre Weatherall, and there's quite a few people that weren't able to be here this evening, and I just would like to speak for them and ask that this does not happen. These creatures are beautiful and loved. They're very important for our tourism, and to destroy them would be barbaric and cruel. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So that is all the citizens' comments that I have received. Madam Clerk, are there any others before we carry on? Thank you. The motion before me is moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Wright. The council receive the citizens' comments submitted at the November 18th, 2024 council meeting. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion is carried. Brings us to staff reports. The first report is with regard to the Applefest 2024 wrap-up. Ms. Birch, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
No, not at this time.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Wright, and I'll need a seconder that council receive this report for information as a summary of Applefest 2024. It's seconded by Councillor Butwell. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. Next report is with regard to the 2021 and 2022 reserve balances. Director Whitfield, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Yes, Mayor. This report should have come forward quite a while ago, and as council is aware, I provide the reserve balances on on all of the budget reports that come to you. And so you've probably seen this in various iterations over the last few years. But this is something that we need to do on an annual basis. So this is a housekeeping report.
Thank you, Director. The motion is moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson. That Council approves the 2021 and 2022 reserve balances report, and that Council receives the 2021 and 2022 development charges reserve report, and authorizes the Treasurer to provide a copy of the financial report to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing as required by legislation. Is there any discussion? Councillor Butwell?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Director Whitfield. So understanding that it is a housekeeping item, was it just missed along the way, that final bit?
Director?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Councillor Butwell. Yeah, I guess because the year ends have been so late in being produced in the last few, that this report didn't come forward as it should have. And as we're going through the development charges, the study with the builders, the developers, they asked us for the reports, and I sent them to them, but Council had not seen them. So I wanted to make sure Council had them, approve them, so I could submit them to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs.
Okay. Just a quick follow-up.
Go ahead.
Did any of the developers / builders take issue with anything in this report that we should be aware of?
Director?
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Butwell, no, I didn't hear anything from them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you both. Anything further from members of Council? All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. Next report is the 2025 fees and charges report. Director Whitfield, we've read this report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Thank you, Mayor. I do. The fees and charges report is the first step in our process for fees and charges. What we'll do is we'll have a public meeting on December 2nd, and the bylaw won't come forward to Council till that third Monday in December. All of our management team has contributed to this report tonight, so I can't answer specific questions on departments, but others are here that could possibly assist.
Thank you for that. The motion is moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Councillor Rowley, that Council receive the 2025 fees and charges report and authorizes staff to advertise for the public meeting on December 2nd, 2024, and to prepare a bylaw for the December 16th, 2024 Council meeting. Questions or comments from members of Council? Councillor Wheeldon.
Thank you, Mayor. Given the referring matters with tennis courts, pickleball courts, etc., to staff and or budget earlier tonight, are we able to even do this right now?
I would suggest this is authorizing staff to advertise for a public meeting, so I think we would be wise to proceed, but staff would then come back with any changes, information, what have you, also at that time, I would suspect. CAO or Director or anybody?
So yes, at the public meeting, we'll take comments from the public. And we had some comments this evening as well. So we'll take that into consideration and we'll bring any changes that we recommend back to Council, and then Council can make their decision from there.
Thank you. Councillor Butwell.
Thank you. Through you, I suppose, to Director Whitfield, simply because not all of the business unit directors are here right now. How are the increases generally? What is the direction from finance to the directors? Because I see that some of them seem to be just rounding up to $1. Some are $5, some are $10. I'm much more accustomed to seeing a progression based on a percentage increase that's recommended by the Department of Finance.
Director.
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Butwell. There's different methods that are undertaken. I ask every director manager to do benchmarking, to reach out or to look at the bylaws from other communities and see how we're comparing. That is the number one benchmark that we have. And then from there, there were some that were 3% increases, we rounded those up to like instead of $51.53, we would round that up to a more round number, just to make it more palatable for the community. They don't want to come in and pay $51.53 plus tax or something. So we usually just, as I said, just benchmark, and Parks and Rec has made a few changes this year that are benchmarked from other communities and other reasons. So that's how we come up with the numbers.
Thank you both. Is this a follow-up?
It is, I suppose, a
Go ahead.
follow-up, yeah. So how are we to know what our actual expenses are and our revenues are to essentially prove that the increases are warranted and that we can justify them to the community?
Director?
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Boutwell, for the most part, these fees and charges don't support the business unit that they're intended to support. So tax support is part of that process as well. If we have increased the fees and charges, we're going to increase the revenues on the budget. And when we increase those fees and charges revenues on the budget, it means that there's less tax increases to come forward for the general public, and the users pay more of their fair share.
Another follow-up?
Yes, it is. So you said the users pay more than, or they would pay their fair share of that increase. What is the division between what we would look at more operational and what the user would cover? What's the ratio there? Because if we're going to discuss them paying their fair share, there has to be something to work it out against, if you would.
Director?
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Boutwell, I think that we would have to look at, I think every single fee would be different. And some of the fees would pay for those services. We could maybe use the example of having something commissioned. It's a very short period of time where we're commissioning something, and the fees are not that great, not unaffordable. And then if it's a resident that comes in with pension documents, as long as they're Brighton resident, the clerk's department will do that for free. And if they're not from Brighton, then they're going to pay for that to be commissioned. That's an example. It would be really overwhelming for me to have to analyze every single fees and charges that we receive and bench, or to give a percentage on every business unit in the organization. I think that would be very comprehensive.
Yeah, I would expect that the directors of each of those departments would do that work for you as well.
Councillor Wright.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, in questioning, sorry, I need to rethink here. In making those phone calls to the other communities who have instituted user fees, in particular for things like hockey, soccer, baseball, tennis, pickleball, all those kinds of things, have the actual associations that are paying those fees, have they been called to find out how they are faring economically and if they are going to be sustainable based on the new fees?
Manager Hallam.
Through you, your worship, to council. The comparison studies that come out among my networking of recreational associates, just compare municipal cost, not club cost. So no, I don't believe the clubs were approached. Thank you.
Thank you both. Any other questions from members of council? Councillor Wheeldon.
Thank you, Mayor. Since there was so much attention on fees for athletics tonight, Parks and Recreation, I wonder, since we are about to strike a committee for Parks and Recreation planning, if this might be something to refer to that committee.
Well, that would be up to council. I wouldn't recommend it, though. This is about fees and charges at this stage, which will form a portion of our budget. And no criticism. I'm not levying criticism. We're already a little bit behind. So I don't want to hold that process up by referring it to a committee that isn't yet constituted, quite frankly.
Fair.
Yeah. And that new committee will, I think, more focus on a new multi-use recreational center rather than operational bits like fees and charges. Anything further from members of council? Councillor Butwell.
Actually, you're going to ask for any, well, when you read the motion, right? You're going to have a, where are we?
I've already read the motion, but I can read it again.
No, let me think about it for a second. So I understand where the departments are coming from by rounding up to the nearest $0 or $5, 10 or 5. I understand it. It's visually appealing. I am not a fan of doing that because we start building in an unfairness or an inequality when you start looking at the lower priced items rise much more quickly than the higher priced items by rounding up. And so we find ourselves over time out of whack. I would much prefer in future, and perhaps on this one as well, if we could see an actual, like we would see for salaries, cost of living. So if we determine that we are going to apply, say, 3%, that it be applied across the board so that we stay current and we don't have to reevaluate every 5 years to find out that a half day has increased 75% versus a full day, which has only increased 35% simply because of the disparity in the numbers. I would just like to express that because I've been there before and long-term, it just doesn't work out.
I didn't hear a question there, so we're going to let that stand out there.
I was just pontificating.
Yeah. Heard, and thank you. Anything else from members of council? All those in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion's carried. Next report is pregnancy leave and parental leave policy for members of council. Madam Clerk, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, just one thing. This policy should have come in front of council last term. It was the intent of the clerk to come and then it was sidetracked. But it was brought to our attention by Councillor Butwell. And it also was part of our policy review. It was listed underneath the policy review that we are doing right now in the clerk's department. But thank you, Councillor Butler, for bringing that to our attention.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The motion is moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Councillor Wright, that council adopt the pregnancy leave and parental leave policy for members of council as outlined in attachment 1 of this report. Is there any discussion? Councillor Butwell.
I would be remiss if I didn't comment on this. So this was mandated by legislation to be completed by the beginning of 2019, I believe it was. So we are nearly 6 years overdue in this bringing this bylaw in. I appreciate that it may have been during the last council's term, but I wonder how many other things have been left off the books simply by oversight. And I accept that it's by oversight. I do not believe at all there was anything deliberately done. I would like to point out that this policy impacts, for the majority, it would be impacting women, women of childbearing years, or perhaps even longer if they chose to adopt. It also impacts gentlemen who would be entitled to a parental leave. The comment that there have not been any council members impacted by this oversight, I feel kind of, and I'm not, again, I don't believe anything nefarious by the inclusion of that comment, but I think that it does expose that we all do have our biases. I did bring it up. I did not quantify why I brought it up, but an assumption was made about my reproductive status. And if I chose to, at this point, I'll share with you, I could have a child. I also think it could have prohibited somebody from participating in the last election if they knew that there was an opportunity for them to continue with their family planning, whether it be a male or female. They may not have run And so it could have been considered a hindrance to what this council ultimately looks like. We have a young family as part of this council, and we may have had that member take some time off. So I appreciate it wasn't simply an error, but these types of errors are not acceptable 6 years later for an issue such as this. Really disappoints me. And I really hope that, I know that the policy reviews are ongoing. Councillor Wielden brought forth some policies related specifically to the Waterloo decision at all, looking at policies that serve to support people's and actually I'll let him speak on that. But I really don't want to find anything else like this again. So I hope that staff is moving forward with catching up on the things that they may have just mistakenly missed.
Thank you for that. I didn't hear a question, so we're going to let that one lie out there unless someone has a comment. Anything further from members of council? All in favor? Are there any opposed? That motion is carried. Next report is the review of municipal policies and introduction of standards for municipal policies and procedures. Deputy Clerk, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Not at this time.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Wielden, seconded by Councillor Rowley. The council adopt the attached draft standards for municipal policies and procedures, and that council approve the attached policy organization documents categorizing current policies as either council policies or administrative procedure. Is there any discussion? Councillor Wielden.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. I really appreciate this. It makes a lot of sense to me. Councillor Butwell was correct in saying that I brought this up initially because I wanted to make sure that we didn't have any bylaws on the books of any kind that were in violation of the charter. And I know that there are a number of municipalities across Ontario that have not changed their policies or bylaws despite the Waterloo and Kingston rulings of 2023, and continue to find creative ways to carry them out until they are challenged in court. And I wanted to make sure that we as a municipality were only supporting bylaws or enforcing bylaws that are aligned with the rights of our residents. And so I'm hoping that we can add in here a clause somewhere that, I mean, we probably take it for granted that we're only going to have legal bylaws, but I don't think we can take it for granted because so many municipalities actually have bylaws that are not legally enforceable. So I think that that was the spirit behind the original motion. I would like to see that more explicitly represented here. Does that make sense?
It does, and it's your motion. So if you would like to add something, now would be the time as the mover.
Thank you. Deputy Clerk, does that make sense to you? And can you see how you might add an inclusion of a clause there?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, Councillor Wielden, can you clarify? Do you mean a clause in the policy or in your recommendation?
I meant a clause in the policy that just makes it explicit that all policies must align with other laws, including the charter.
Yeah.
So if we added something like, and further that council direct that all policies and procedures align with the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, would that work for you, Councillor Wielden?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, can I just clarify?
may.
I think you want something in the policy specifically.
Do you want something in the policy specifically, or were you looking to add to this motion?
I would like to add to both, if that's all right.
So as amended to add?
So we would do that council adopt the attached draft standards as amended,
That sounds fine.
and that council approve the attached policy organization documents categorized blah, 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 also as amended.
That sounds fine.
And further, that council directs that all policies and procedures align with the Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
Amen.
I'm sorry, Council Rowley is the seconder. You're good? It's moved by Councilor Wheeldon, seconded by Councilor Rowley, that council adopt the attached draft standards for municipal policies and procedures as amended, and that council approve the attached policy organization documents categorizing current policies as either council policy or administrative procedures as amended, and that council direct that all policies and procedures align with the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Does that wording sound right to you, Councilor Wheeldon? Councilor Rowley? Any further discussion? Councilor Butwell.
This time it's actually a question. So, Mr. Mayor, through you, under employee policies, there, I guess, what page is this? Comes up as page 10 out of 12 under employee assistance program. Says purpose statement that the municipality does not have a formal employee assistance program. We had decided or discussed an EAP at one point. Why are we seeing a statement that says that we don't have one when the direction from council was that we look into getting one?
CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Butwell. During negotiations with the union this year, we did include the EAP program, and council will see likely at the next meeting the non-union compensation agreement as well, where we have incorporated that as a recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Then why are we seeing it in here with a statement that the municipality does not have it?
Deputy Clerk.
These are current policies. So the current policy says we do not have one. It's only new that this has come up. So it will be part of the update of all the policies.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you all. Any further discussion from members of council? Those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion is carried. Next is a CAO ongoing report and capital project status. CAO, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
No, not at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councilor Wright, seconded by Councilor Wheeldon. The council received the CAO ongoing report and capital projects update as information. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Our agenda shows two notices of motions, which will be read as motions at the December 2nd meeting. Thank you, Madam Clerk. We have no items listed under unfinished business, which brings us to bylaws. First bylaw is amending bylaw for development charges. It's moved by Councilor Butwell, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that council gives a bylaw. Its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to amend the development charges bylaw 089, 2019. Is there any discussion? This is just an extension, correct? Yes, I'm getting a head nod from the CAO. Anything further? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. Brings us to reports, minutes of advisory committees of council and review teams. The first is the Intermunicipal Task Force on Housing and Homelessness. It's moved by Councilor Rowley, seconded by Councilor Wheeldon, that council receive the Intermunicipal Task Force on Housing and Homelessness October 17th, 2024 meeting summary. Councillor Wheeldon, as the chair, do you have anything to note here?
I do. I wasn't actually able to be at this meeting, so Deputy Mayor Claire Holloway-Wadwani from Port Hope was chairing the meeting and took notes. So thank you to her for those notes. One of the things that they discussed is a notice of motion that Deputy Mayor Holloway-Wadwani has brought to Port Hope, asking their mayor to bring a motion to County Council asking for direction on encampment management, with the recognition that the primary encampment in Coburg is likely to be dispersed on the sale of the land. Lower tier members were looking for some direction as to what will come next. I am aware that the county has proactively fenced off its properties so that no new encampments will appear on upper tier municipal land. And so there was just some question of what will happen there. We've just passed a motion asking that all of our bylaws, ensuring all of our bylaws here comply with the charter. But at the same time, the Premier is talking about potentially invoking the notwithstanding clause to bypass the charter and allow encampments to continue to be cleared. So this is still very much a moving ball. We're not really sure where it's going to land, but these issues are certainly present, and the task force will meet again this week.
Thank you for that, Councillor Wheeldon. And my thanks to you and your task force for bringing the Homelessness 101 session in a quasi-difficult joint council session, because of course we're not really permitted under the Municipal Act to meet as lower tiers and upper tiers, which is of course ridiculous. We all are trying to row together, but the Act is very clear about how we separate these things. So we worked with the Integrity Commissioner to be able to come together as lower tiers and as an upper tier council. This group, the Intermunicipal Task Force, brought us through a consultant a bit of a Homelessness 101 session, and county staff offered tours of the new homeless shelter at 310 Division Street and one of the Northumberland County Housing Corporation properties at Elgin Street. So I think it was a good evening for everyone. Lot to learn, a lot to take in. So thank you for bringing that to us as well.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say that when I saw the new shelter at 310 Division Street, honestly, I cried. I used to chair the board of Transition House, and I know that that building and the incredible staff there have worked so hard for many years to do as much good as they could in that constrained environment. And it was overwhelming to see what an incredible improvement 310 Division Street is going to be. And I'm so glad that it's opening up. So thank you to you and County Council for doing what it takes to get it open. I know there were a lot of challenges for that, and will continue to be challenges, frankly. But I'm so glad that there's a place for people to keep warm and do laundry and have space that is safe and have a little bit of privacy and things that just really make us human. So thank you for that.
Well, you're welcome. And it was a long road, as you know. Complex issues never have simple solutions. So I'm happy to report that we do have a license, an emergency care establishment license from the town of Coburg. The warming room is open for folks who need to get in out of the cold, and county staff are working hard to make sure the actual shelter rooms are open as early in December as we possibly can. So any questions or comments from members of council on the meeting summary of October 17th from this intermunicipal task force? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. The next is the Heritage Advisory Committee. It's moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon, that council receive the September 9th, 2024 Heritage Advisory Committee meeting minutes as presented. Councillor Wright, as our Representative, do you have anything to highlight on these?
I would just like to say this has been a really great committee to work with. We've got some really fine people around the horseshoe, and we're getting some stuff done, which is really nice to see. I think it's been a bit of a long battle, especially with all the changes that came with Bill 23, catching up with all of that and what it means for heritage in particular. So it was a long road, but we're getting there. So there's some recommendations coming.
That's good, and we look forward to those. I will say that there are heritage owners in the community, owners of homes that may or may not be heritage, but would be considered old, that are wringing their hands and wondering. But I know the collaborative approach that the committee's taking is going to work out well for the community, so I appreciate that. Anything from members of council on these minutes? All those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. The next is, again, from the Heritage Advisory Committee. It's moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon, and it says that council receive or support the recommendation from the Heritage Advisory Committee. And I'll need to know if it's to support. I assume it is, Councillor Wright?
Support.
Yes. Councillor Wheeldon, are you okay with that? Yes. And further, that council directs staff to investigate possible enhancements for the Lagoon Park for heritage purposes and report back to council for consideration. Is there any discussion? Councillor Rowley?
Thank you. What kind of plants would you be looking for? I know you probably don't have a lot, but just to get my head around what Lagoon Park is, I know where it is. But what do you have in mind?
Councillor Wright?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. It's partially why it's going to a staff report. We'd love to see even something simple like a bench close by the plaque that is being installed regarding Smithfield and the mills that were part of the history and heritage of Smithfield. I didn't know, you're ahead of me. I didn't know where the park was until the last heritage meeting. I had no idea there was such thing as a Lagoon Park. So it's actually a very pretty spot.
Councillor
Thank
Butwell?
you. Through you to Councillor Wright, perhaps for those listening at home, you can let them know where Lagoon Park is.
Your microphone?
It is on one of the streets between County Road 2 and Smith Street. If you give me a quick moment, I can.
Drummond.
It's on Drummond?
Yeah.
Okay. And it's on the west side. There's just a small area there of parkland. I looked at it on Google Maps at the time, and it looked like it's managed to a degree by the town already. So we just need something like a bench and maybe a spot to park a car or two, so that's not damaging the green space.
Thank you. Anything further from members of council? Those in favor? Motion's carried. Brings us to reports, minutes of statutory committees, boards, and external agencies. The only one listed is the Lower Trent Conservation Authority. It's moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Councillor Wright. The council receive the Lower Trent Conservation Authority October 10th, 2024 board meeting as presented. Councillors Wheeldon and Wright, do you have anything to add, highlight, or discuss with regard to these minutes as our reps? Nothing from Councillor Wright, nothing from Councillor Wheeldon. Any discussion from members of council? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. Brings us to correspondence, direction items, endorsements, communications, and petitions. The first comes from Grand Northumberland, with a motion moved by Councillor Wright. Second, no, it's a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Wright. The council support the request from Grand Northumberland to proclaim November 25th to December 10th, 2024 as the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence and Eliminate Violence Against Women and Girls campaign, and permission to tie orange ribbons at King Edward Park, Municipal Center, and the Public Library. Whereas the United Nations Unite campaign to end violence against women raises awareness and calls for action during the 16 days using the color orange as a uniting theme. And whereas the municipality of Brighton acknowledges the Grandmothers Advocacy Network, a Canadian organization that advocates for the human rights of grandmothers and vulnerable children who experience violence in their daily lives, and whereas violence against women and girls is pervasive around the world, including Canada, and whereas by creating worldwide awareness and calling for adequate, sustained resources, we will find solutions to end gender-based violence. Now, therefore, members of council of the municipality of Brighton do hereby proclaim the 16 days, November 25th to December 10th, 2024, as Orange Days, End Violence Against Women and Girls in the municipality of Brighton. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. Next piece of correspondence comes from Audra Anderson Sherman. It's moved by Councillor Rowley and seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson that council support the request from Audra Anderson Sherman. Is there any discussion? Councillor Wheeldon?
Thank you. I would like to once again ask that we refer this to the Environmental Sustainability Committee. There are some people with expertise on these matters. Obviously, we had an expert come to us and tell us that there were problems, and then we had others come to us with scientific literature telling us that there were not problems. And I would like to refer this to the committee.
Are you asking for a friendly amendment, or are you making a motion to refer?
I would look to your guidance as the chair on that. I'm not sure which one is preferable.
Working together is always preferable. So I'll ask if Councillor Rowley and Deputy Mayor Anderson would like to add a referral line to this. And if not, I will go to Councillor Wheeldon to see if he wants to refer a motion on the table. Councillor Rowley?
I don't want to let this motion go, but I would add a friendly amendment if Councillor Wheeldon, I know Deputy Mayor has seconded this motion. So I would then like it to read that we support the correspondence and then refer it to this. Is it your Sustainability Committee, Councillor Wheeldon?
Correct, yes.
So the motion would read that council supports the request from Audra Anderson Sherman, and further that council refers the correspondence to the Environmental Sustainability Advisory Committee. Deputy Mayor, are you okay with that? Councillor Wheeldon?
To be clear then, does that mean that we would be rescinding the motion, writing to the ministry, etc., all of the things in there if we support the correspondence?
No. What it would mean is that the clerk and I will need to have a conversation about how we go down that road. We have a motion on the floor that sends us in one direction. Today, we are asking to support a motion that takes us to negate that direction. We are not permitted after the meeting is closed to reconsider a motion. So if council supports the correspondence, the clerk and I are going to have to figure out how we do that. So there will be time for the Environmental Sustainability Advisory Committee to take a look at this, I think. When do they meet again? Okay. So that we can get advice from that advisory committee while we're also figuring out a procedural way to make this happen.
Okay. If the advice from the advisory committee is contrary to this correspondence, what happens then?
Well, I think two things happen. We have to consider that advice while we also figure out the procedural wranglings of how to negate the initial motion. So all of that will form part and parcel of the discussion. The other thing that will happen is we will continue to see on social that we want to murder swans.
I do want to say to everyone, nobody ever asked to kill swans. We just had a long discussion about how to control populations of cats that does not in any way involve killing them.
Exactly.
I wanted to know our options on that, which is why I supported the motion back then. Certainly, the Environmental Sustainability Committee is interested in controlling invasive species. we're not interested in killing animals. So can we stop with that rhetoric, please, everyone? Thank you.
So I've added the line, and further that the correspondence is referred to the Environmental Sustainability Advisory Committee. You're okay? Deputy Mayor, you're okay? Anything further for members of council? Councillor Rowley?
Like a recorded vote, please.
Okay, after we finish the discussion. Councillor Boutwell.
Thank you. So the original motion that passed, has that communication been forwarded to the ministry already?
Madam Clerk?
It has, but we've not heard anything back.
And the request to the Heraldic Society has also been forwarded?
Madam Clerk?
I'd have to, I think it was followed through with the motion.
Okay.
But I have not heard back from anybody on this.
So is there not a procedure to rescind a motion?
Yes, during the same meeting
Yeah, or the next meeting.
or the next meeting, and we're way past that. So we got to figure this one out.
So what is preventing us from just doing an entirely new motion that basically says we ask that this be left on our, right? We could just do a whole new motion.
In theory, that's what this is. And I just want to make sure that procedurally, if we do support the correspondence, that procedurally, in fact, what we have done is negate our original motion. But that would be reconsidering the motion. So I just want to get procedural advice. That's all. I want to make sure we're doing it right.
Can we get a response to that before the Christmas holidays at least? Because I agree with Councillor Wheeldon that we definitely got a great presentation from Mr. McCrae, a well-respected member of the community and that sector. We also received a secondary contradictory report with, again, great information. And I would myself prefer to kind of neutralize what's happened, which is, I suppose, what you're looking into. Referring to the Environmental Sustainability Committee, I think, is a great way to start using our committees for the things that they were set up to do. I just want to make sure we're actually accomplishing what we're intending to do.
But at the end of the day, it will only be a recommendation from the Sustainability Committee, which once again, council will vote on.
And hopefully, given that council is asking for some information and advice from this committee, we can get something. We can get the committee pulled together in advance of when they're scheduled to come together. And I'm looking at the clerks to nod their heads, and they are. So that's wonderful. Anything further from members? Oh, go, Councillor Wheeldon. I see your hand up.
Thank you, sir. I'm not comfortable supporting this without that advisement from the Sustainability Committee. I'm also not comfortable reversing our decision on the Canadian Heraldic Authority and our coat of arms. It was mentioned in the presentation that the other things on our coat of arms are also non-native species, and we did specifically ask that they include native species. So I expect we would get something that is more representative of Brighton, the Brighton that people settled into, which I think is a market improvement. And so I don't feel like I can support this either because I don't have enough information or because parts of it I wouldn't support over others.
That being said, then perhaps you should put a motion to refer the matter on the table and see if that flies.
Then I would like to do so, sir. Thank you. I will say to Councillor Rowley's point that yes, it would come back to council to vote on, but it would, after having a group of people who have some expertise in this area, discussing it and weighing out one group of evidence over another. I don't feel like we've had the opportunity to do that effectively. And so that's the point of it. Even though it will come back to us, I would like it to come back with their recommendation because I don't have enough information to sort out which of the experts in the room were correct.
Thank you. Now, a motion to refer takes precedence over the standing motion. It's moved by Councillor Wheeldon, and we'll see if there's a seconder that the correspondence from Audra Anderson Sherman be referred to the Environmental Sustainability Advisory Committee. Is there a seconder? With no seconder, the motion fails. The original motion reads, as amended, that is moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that Council support the request from Audra Anderson Sherman, and further that the correspondence is referred to the Environmental Sustainability Advisory Committee. Councillor Rowley, you still okay with that? Deputy Mayor? Anything further from members of council? All those in favor? Oh,
Still want a recorded vote.
Councillor Rowley requested a recorded vote, Madam Clerk.
Counselor Emily Rowley,
Yes.
Counselor Jeff Wheeldon,
No.
Counselor Bobby Wright,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Ron Anderson,
Yes.
Counselor Ann Butwell,
Yes.
Mayor Brian Ostrander.
Yes.
That's carried.
Thank you all. That takes us to the correspondence from the Brian Taub Memorial Community Fund. It's moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson. The council support the request from the Brian Taub Memorial Community Fund, permission and assistance from municipal staff to hang banners bearing local student art in downtown Brighton and Smithfield. Is there any discussion? Councillor Rowley.
I do have a question. Is this request different than what we've received in other years? This wouldn't be the first time that they have come
I
here.
believe it's the same request we've received
So
for
it's just-
the last few
okay.
years. Yeah.
Yep, okay.
Welcome. Anything further from members of council? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. And correspondence from the Township of Puslinch. It's moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Councillor Rowley, that council receive or support Township of Puslinch Council Resolution Number 2024-378 regarding provincial projects and excess soil management practices. Councillor Wheeldon, as the mover, are we supporting or receiving?
Support.
Councillor Rowley as the seconder. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Brings us to FYI correspondence. These are updates from Northumberland County, November 11th to 22. It's moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Wright. The council received the updates from Northumberland County, November 11th to November 22nd as information. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. That brings us to question period. Are there any questions from members of the gallery? Former Deputy Mayor Laura Connect. Question period is an opportunity for members of the public to ask questions about items that appeared on this evening's agenda. Members are asked to state their name for the record before asking their question. A maximum of 5 minutes is set aside for question period. Laura, language, content, and conduct must remain respectful at all times. Questions will be received and answered by the mayor or by a member of council or staff if designated by the mayor.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's great being on this side. I was going to ask a question during question period, but you're kind of inundated, so I didn't. So I will form my comment. Sorry, I was going to make a comment. So I'm going to form my comment in the form of a question. Make my comment. Tonight we had a report from Caroline Birch about Applefest, and there was no comments made about it. And the committee and Caroline worked very, very hard. And I think it's amazing, the results from Applefest and the economic promotion that it provides for Brighton. And I just wanted to kind of highlight that and the amazing work that is done by a committee of 5 volunteers along with staff. And I guess my question would be, don't you think so too?
Thank you, Ms. Connect. We do. And council did a great deal of lauding of Applefest immediately after the event itself here in this chamber and around the community. So
That's
we
great.
appreciate your work, as I said on stage that day and in the preceding council meeting. So thank you again.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
That report was excellent.
It was excellent, Caroline. Which is why we had no questions, right? That's how it works. Ms. Casson.
Yeah, it's Joyce
Thank
Casson,
you.
135 Bayshore. I was just wondering, for the 2025 fees and charges report, it was said that they did a benchmark with other communities. What other communities were there?
It would depend on which department did the.
Parks and Rec specifically.
You want to know Parks and Rec?
Yes, please.
Manager Hallam, do you have an answer to that?
15 neighboring municipalities, all small. So I did not compare cost with cities, City of Belleville, City of Quinte West, that sort of thing. So
Could you send me those?
the list of them?
Yes, please.
Sure, I could probably read them to you right now if you prefer.
Sure.
If you can get them quickly.
Oh, sorry.
Or shall we wait till after the meeting?
Well, oh, she's got them right there. There you go.
Okay.
Grafton, Madoc, Coburg, Colburn, Duro-Dummer, Havelock, Baltimore, Marmora, Norwood, Autonomy, South Monaghan, Port Hope, Selwyn, Sterling, Trent Hills, and Tweed.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? All right, I will now read our motion to go into closed session. If council chooses to proceed into closed session, we'll take a 10-minute recess. And I will advise that anyone who's listening to us on the live YouTube stream, we will be ending the live YouTube stream for the duration of this evening's meeting. Motion is moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Wright. The council resolve itself into closed session November 18th, 2024 at 9:16 p.m. Pursuant to the Ontario Municipal Act, RSO 2001 as amended, subsection 239(2)B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and D, labor relations and employee negotiations, human resources matters. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. It is 9:17 p.m. We will recess until 9:27.